Okay. I think we just start, and it's really my great pleasure welcoming Elsie Spittle, to this webinar. And I think, as most people of you know, she has been an international recognized consultant in this field for more than 4 decades. And she's really in the unique position of being only one of the three principles practitioner that really knew Sydney Banks before he had his epiphany. And so she witnessed that extraordinary change he went through, uh, and the unprecedented impact his teaching had on so many people for so many years. Um, Elsie had the privilege of getting what we could call on-the-job training with Sydney Banks, traveling with him to meet with health practitioners, with educators, with business leaders, and working side by side with Sid for many, many years. So she's now considered the first formal teacher beyond Sydney Banks. And I can say she's a really highly, highly regarded speaker and lecturer all over the world now. Elsie also is the co-founder of the Three Principal School in Salt Spring Island. And she runs the school together with Chip Chipman. I actually had the privilege of being there a couple of years ago, which was a wonderful experience. I just want to mention, when me and my wife learned about the principles about 5 years ago or so, we very soon came over some videos with Elsie. And just knew we have to meet this person. So about 3 years ago, we traveled to Salt Spring Island and had 4 wonderful days together with Elsie. And a very deep and warm friendship developed after that. And 2 years ago, she came to Norway to give a weekend retreat seminar here in our little town, Tønsberg, which was a fantastic event. And we are so honored that she's coming back this year in June to give another retreat, mentored by Mind. And as far as I know, this would be your only appearance in Europe this year, apart from the London conference.
Right.
So we're truly honored to have you coming here. And I myself look very much forward to this, what you will share tonight. And I guess we will leave it open up for you, Elsie, and then whenever you feel time is right, you can let people in with comments and questions.
All right. Thank you, Tori, for that lovely introduction. I must say, as I listen to it, I wonder, who are you talking about? And it brings to life again for me the privilege it was to know Sydney Banks. And even though he's been gone for like a decade now, since 2009, he's still very much alive in my mind and in his materials that are available and in his message that is spreading throughout the world. Certainly at the time when Sid had his experience and our friendship was rather shaky after his experience, it wasn't as strongly rooted in insecurity as it had been prior to his discovering or uncovering, as he always put it, uncovering the three principles. And in those days, although I could feel something different had happened to him. I could see the transformation in him and then in his wife and family. I wasn't keen on it. It was so out of left field. He was talking about something that was so over my head. So it was always that conflict between my intellect and what I was feeling in his presence. And it's interesting because as I was waiting for the webinar to start, it's 10 o'clock here in the morning on the Northwest Pacific coast. And I was just sitting in the recliner and the sun was shining on my face and I just felt quiet. I felt still inside. And the thought popped up that I was being mentored by mind, just relaxing in that stillness, in the sun. It could have been cloudy. It didn't matter. You know, it's not like the conditions. It was the feeling of being quiet inside and knowing that quietness is being mentored by mind, even if there's no actual words or text coming, you know, and no form of what to say. It's the feeling. It's always been the feeling for humanity. But for me, on a personal level, that is what has helped me in my journey in those early year and a half when my intellect fought so much what Sid was sharing with us. It was the feeling of his presence. It was seeing the peace in his face. It was seeing how he enjoyed the simplicity of his life in a way that, having known him and how he lived before, that wasn't him. You know, there was a distinct difference in how he perceived life and how he lived life. And there was a vitality that came to life in him. Not a feeling of striving to get ahead in life, which he had that when he was still working with my husband at the pulp mill. He really wanted to be a foreman. He wanted to move ahead in his work career. And often because of the insecurity he had and some conflict that he had with the managers and bosses at work, that never happened for him. He might be considered, but then something would come out of him that prevented his promotions. And he would take it personally, because when we're feeling insecure, that's what life looks like to us. We take it personally. And so what was so fascinating is that after his experience, when he went back to the pulp mill and worked there for 10 months, I, on one hand, was rather taken aback that he would do that. Like if what had happened to him was, as he said, that he had found the secret to life, why would you go back to the old job that was in a dirty, chemical-ridden pulp mill, where the bosses didn't listen to you, where management lived in an ivory tower and the union often didn't listen to you? Like, why would you go back to that same environment? And yet, after a number of years, as I began my journey, I could see the beauty of why he went back to work. It was a case of being mentored by mind. He knew that was the way to go. Chip and I made a documentary with Julian Freeman several years ago, maybe 3 years ago, called The Genesis of the Three Principles. And in that video, I talk about Sid going back to work and how his whole journey in sharing the principles, he was mentored by mind. He didn't know how to share. He didn't know what steps to take in order to share his wisdom with the world. He was mentored from the inside out, and he followed that guidance implicitly. And so he went back to work. And that to me then became a visible example of the profundity of wisdom and the practicality of wisdom. At that point, he still needed to support his family. There was no financial aid coming in from anywhere else. he was in transition. And so he needed to work to provide, continue their livelihood for his family and 2 children. And at the same time, because he had transformed so much in his attitude toward people, toward humanity and toward life in general, the people at work that he had a contentious relationship with, it was like he fell in love with them. He just saw them with kind and loving eyes. He saw them with understanding, and they became good buddies. And on the other hand, some of his good buddies were taken aback, like Ken and I were, by the transformation in them. And like what happened to Scotty, he's not the same insecure person that I am anymore, because that had been our bond, was our insecurity. It wasn't joy in life. It wasn't that at all. Our bond and our friendship was based on insecurity. And so when our friend found a new attitude toward life, a new perspective, it just pulled the rug out from under us. And because our insecurity was still so strong, intellectually, we couldn't hear him. But again, like, this is evidence that whether we can hear with our intellect or not, our wisdom, our true nature responds to love, to unconditional love, which is what Sid shared with us and with his colleagues and friends at work, and those around him who were questioning him, as Ken and I were. And so that was the evidence of right at the beginning of Sid being mentored by mind all the way along. There were times then when he came near to the end of his time at work, he knew it was time then for him to go out and serve the world. Now, he still didn't have any other income coming in from any other work or projects, but he just knew it was time to leave work. And Ken and I, again, were very concerned, and kind of considered his decision to leave the pulp mill rather frivolous. What was he thinking? Where had this responsibility for his family and their livelihood gone? We thought his head was maybe in the sky too much. He wasn't thinking clearly. And yet his courage and his being mentored by mind gave him solace, gave him comfort. And he said to us, I know we'll be okay. I know we'll be okay. Something will come, and something did. I'm not saying that there weren't times during that transition before slowly some income started to come in from people realizing, okay, Sid has been working with us and sharing with us, when the early psychologists like Dr. Mills, who passed away many years ago now, and Dr. George Pransky and Dr. Schuford and Dr. Blevins, when they all started to come to the island, and Sid just spoke with them, for no financial benefit or anything. He just was into serving and sharing this message with the world. So money was never his first priority. But as time went on, the psychologists began to see, okay, we need to help this man. The message that he's giving out to the world, we need to support him, not only in terms of our own learning and sharing it with our colleagues and our clients, but we need to help support him financially. And so that started to develop. And then, when he moved here to the island with his family, the first people he was working with, again, were, many of them had no money either to help. And Sid just gave. He would rent the halls where he spoke when it grew out of being able to invite people to his home. And he just continued to give and give as best as he could. And gradually things turned around. Every phase of his journey, I saw that man mentored by mind. Now, I didn't know that we all have that capacity, that we all are mind, consciousness, and thought. That it's not that we apply these principles or that we practice these principles. These principles are living. You know, they're a living substance within us. In the same way that we breathe air, you know, if we can't breathe air, we would die. And so these principles are like the breath of life. And when I was talking with Tori and Carrie a couple of weeks ago and talking about this webinar, and I reread the invitation for the retreat in Norway, I saw that phrase, living truth, that this understanding is living truth. And it really hit me again. And I love when that happens because mind was prompting me to have another look. It showed me, revealed more meaning to that same phrase of an invitation that I had written 8 months ago. And that's a beautiful thing for all of us to honor, to know that when we have an insight, it's just not here and then it's gone and it has no value anymore. It's living truth. And it's always in our being, you know, in our spiritual being, in our true nature being, in our physical being. We never, ever lose it. And the more we realize that, the more we stop yearning for more. I have a number of people recently that said, you know, that they've been at the school on the island or they were at the retreat. I see a couple of faces here that were at the retreat in Italy that I did for Kay Taylor and Steph Wilson. And I remember sharing that I'd had an insight about how the three principles are one 38 years after I had the first insight about the principle of thought. So you know what I mean? It's like you never lose this living truth. Something that came to you as an insight many years ago or 6 months ago or whatever is still alive in you, in all of us. And so when people come to me and say, I've lost that feeling that I had when I was on Salt Spring, it's like, no, you didn't. You just think you did. You know, it's still in you. It's just covered up for the moment by some of your personal thinking of I've lost that feeling. And so they say, well, then how do I get it back? Well, by honoring what you do have. Instead of yearning for more or wanting the feeling that you did have, honor what you have. Honor that you see. Like a gentleman that I spoke to last week had that very phrase, I've lost the feeling that I had on Salt Spring. And yet when he came to our call, he was a little bit rushed and he said, gosh, Elsie, I just remembered our call. I just about missed it. And I said, oh, that's fine, no problem. You know, just here we are together. And he said, yes, he said, I was wall climbing, you know, one of those things in the gym where you climb the wall. And I had to chuckle because climbing the wall for me has another connotation altogether. It's not physically climbing a wall, it's mentally, you know, if I've been agitated, it's mentally climbing a wall with all my personal thinking going on. But he was loving the sport of climbing this wall in the gym so much that he was lost in the moment. and he forgot our call. I thought that was splendid. Like, how cool is that, that you were so in the moment that you forgot time? Like, that's alive. That's our living being in the moment. Be grateful for that instead of getting anxious that you're going to miss an appointment. He didn't, because he was mentored by mind that he made it in time. But he still had a little bit of anxious thinking that, am I going to make it in time? He made it in time. But instead of honoring his anxious thinking, I suggested to him that he honor being in the moment and take a deeper look at that being in the moment, that's our true nature, that's our spiritual nature. And there's a gift to that. Like when we experience being in the moment and we lose track of time, that's, for me, that's what I hear when Sid would talk at his conferences and write in his books, being beyond time, space, and matter. When he used to say those words, it was just so over my head. But then every now and then when I lost track of time, I remember being in New Zealand, sitting on the beach and watching a child play in the sand with their bucket and little shovel. And I just was so drawn in to the joyful being in the moment of that child that I joined him in my enjoyment of observing this child being in the moment. And I lost track of time. And then I became aware of time again. But what came to me was, that feels as if that was a tiny little glimmer of what Sid meant when he said, there's a space, there's something beyond time, space, and matter. And I thought only someone like Sid, who had had this profound enlightenment where he said to us, it's not that I had a near-death experience, which he honored when other people would talk about that, but he said, I didn't, he said, I went through to the other side. Like it wasn't just a near-death experience. He said, I went through to the other side. So I thought that only someone who had experienced the other side could experience even a tiny glimmer of beyond time. But I'm saying here and now that we all have that capacity, because we all are spiritual energy in the form of our physical bodies. And the more we hold that dear, the more we release that, the more we don't long for anything else. Because more and more we see we already have all the world encapsulated in our being. The last thing I want to offer before I check in with you, and I'd love to hear from you all and from Tori and Carrie, something that came to mind again in the last month in talking with a couple. And I've had this conversation with many people over the years, the difference between self-care and soul care. Sometimes someone will come to me for mentoring, and they're very successful mentors in their own right, world-renowned coaches and mentors. but they're starting to lose the feeling a little bit and they're not sure why. And then they share with me all they're doing. And all they're doing is, serving the world, but in their service to the world, they have forgotten service to self. And I mean the big self with the big S, not the little personal self. I mean the big self, the soul self. And so they'll say, well, look, they don't hear that at first. And so they say, well, I do take care of myself. I make sure that in the afternoon I take a little extra time and have a cup of tea or put my feet up, or I have a bath. And when I'm in the bath, I take a look at my phone or I read my tablet. It's like, that's not what I'm pointing to. If you're taking your devices into the bath with you, that's not exactly what I call soul time. And then somebody said to me one time during this conversation, but when I'm having a shower, I'll often have an insight. Why is that? Well, gosh, because I can't take my devices in the shower with me. So, I have the opportunity to be more in the moment, right? I can see some smiling faces and nods of heads here. And that's it. It's like, it's lovely to take care of your physical body, the vessel for our spiritual being, for that living truth. But we want to start with soul care. And so when this couple was saying the same thing, well, I eat healthy, and, I've had a lot of fries since I come to the island, a lot of fish and chips. I don't normally eat that way. But, when I get back home, I'll eat more healthy. And so I go again to, I'm not talking about like physical care. That will come, but it's soul care. And then sometimes people will say, but if the soul is this infinite spiritual formless energy, does it need care? Isn't it like beyond our care? In the purest sense, yes. You can't destroy or damage that pure energy. It's, I don't know even how it's unexplainable what I'm trying to say. The only way I can describe it is that it's indestructible because it's this formless energy. So how could you destroy formless energy? Like, even with my limited scientific intellect, the energy would, if you tried to destroy it or explode it, it would just move into other forms of energy or particles or whatever. That's the best I can say. But that energy is housed in our physical body. So it's coming through us, right? And that's why we honor that we at least allow space to hear it. So it's that harmony between our physical and our spiritual being. That's a lovely, lovely, precious thing to cherish. Having said that, I also know that insight will come through when there is anger, because I've experienced that. The most anger I ever experienced was when I had the insight pierce through the anger for a moment and revealed that principle of thought creates feeling. So I know that insight and wisdom and our spiritual nature is available at any time. It can come through at any time. I'm just saying that rather than being angry and waiting for and an insight comes through spontaneously, give ourselves the gift of soul care. Enjoy the richness of soul care. you know, where you don't have to serve humanity all the time in order to feed off that service, because that's it's like you give energy out, you get energy back in. That's a beautiful, mutually beneficial spiritual process. Turn it inward. Explore soul care. Explore the depth of conversation that you can have with your own true nature. And sometimes that conversation will be silence and peace and feeling blissful. And then you go out into the world again and you just are enjoying life in all its many disguises. Tori, how is that sitting with you?
Oh, that's sitting wonderful with me, Elsie. Really beautiful. I just love what you were saying. It really takes me this whole. I mean, we are so caught up in having to be in charge of our situation, our feelings, having to fix this, figure that out. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in this. The personal mind intellect has to be in charge of our own well-being. And it limits us so tremendously. So listening to you, I just realized now how, I mean, it's just about stepping into the unknown, trusting the universal mind, letting go of what I know, which is really limited, and opening up for all the unlimited potential that I don't know. I learned more and more to trust what I would just refer to as the unknown, which is really everything that is not yet created, but is there as a huge potential. And to let this energy of the universal mind to lead me, and trusting that the feeling would help me to tell the difference of whether this is something that would serve me, serve my soul, or something that will just lead me astray. So I love this title, Mentored by Mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's as simple as that. If we can follow that, we'll be doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the work that you and Carrie have done in Norway and Tonsberg and all that, how you started the Three Principles School in Tonsberg, and I've seen you being mentored by Mind, the two of you, where you weren't quite sure how to share. You know, we talked about that when you came to the island and when I was in Norway. And I've seen you both step into the unknown and never been really too concerned about numbers of people, that you've just been honoring how this journey has unfolded for you in sharing what you've uncovered, the two of you have uncovered. So I've seen that in you two as you've kind of formed a business to share this, and I've seen the two of you do that in your own lives. Carrie, I'm going to call on you, if you don't mind. I know I may be putting you on the spot, but I'm trusting that you'll be okay with that. Are you there?
Oh, let's see if she's there. She's
I'm
sitting there.
here, but I don't know how to turn on my
On the
picture.
video?
I'm gray, isn't? Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I come down and fix it for you.
That's lovely. I've never seen Torre move so fast in my life. That's being in the moment. Well done, Torre. That's beautiful. But
Wow.
oh, there you are, lovely Carrie. And Carrie is sitting in front of one. She's an artist as well. She's sitting in front of one of her incredible paintings. But
Yeah.
Carrie, if it's okay, you know I put you on the spot, but I see by the look on your face you're willing. You shared something when the three of us were talking a couple of weeks ago that was just a beautiful example of being mentored by mind. Do you
Yeah.
remember what that was?
Yes, I remember. But what struck me now, while you were talking, if I can also share that,
Please, yes.
is that actually how easy it is. Because we think that we have to do and do and do and practice and strive to get this, but it's actually more a resting and resting into who you really are, and that's very easy actually.
Oh, I love
But
that.
it's kind of, yeah, it's resting
Yes.
and allowing yourself to be who you are.
Yeah.
Now that struck me when you were talking today. Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate. I love that, Carrie. Thank you.
It's very easy. But I'm a painter and I was stuck. I have been stuck for many months with my paintings and I have been struggling. And one day I thought, okay, I sit down in front of the blank canvas and just meditate and ask mind for help. And I thought, I asked this question inside and I expected some answers, but I didn't get any answers. I asked again and nothing came. And I gave up. And then I opened my eyes and I looked at the canvas and I saw a tiny shape. And I thought, oh, maybe I can paint that orange. So that was my thought. But I stood up and I went to the drawer and I found, what you call it, charcoal?
Charcoal.
Charcoal. And I started to draw on the canvas. And that was not a thought that I had in my mind at all. I just did it. So instead of doing what I thought I should do, that was to paint orange, I was drawing. And I was drawing for 3 hours.
Wow.
And a totally new expression came out. So I have started to paint in a different way. And now I'm making compositions with the charcoal first.
Wow.
That was very surprising because it wasn't at all in my mind to start drawing on the canvas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was very surprising.
That's a very strong example, a very profound example, Carrie. I love how that you're sitting there, you're asking mind, and yet when you gave it up, there came the answer. I just love that.
Yeah. And it didn't go through my head.
Yes.
It was beyond the head.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. And thank you for being so generous in sharing that.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So anybody else now want to add something or share an example of being mentored by mind?
And if you're not familiar with Zoom, if you take the cursors down to the bottom left corner of the screen, there is a microphone symbol there. You can click on that to unmute yourself and just go from there.
Hi.
Yes, Sue. Is that Sue?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Sue.
How are you, darling? Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, good.
I just want to kind of tell a bit of a story of a near-death experience that I had. 21 years ago, I had a daughter. 2 weeks after she was born, I was rushed to hospital in a coma. I had a blood clot in my brain. While I was in the coma, my dad came for me, who passed away 10 years prior. And he was saying, come on. I said, I can't come. I've got the baby. I can't come.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously, from then on, I recovered. But for many, many years, I was a victim. This happened to me, you know, and my system let me down and everything. But it's coming across the principles. That's totally reversed. It's now, well, my wisdom shut my system down and put me into a coma to protect me. It's just a complete different way of looking at it.
Wow.
You know, it really is an amazing way of looking at it. You know, I still suffer with a lot of anxiety. I still don't go out. But that's, you know, that's a trust thing, and the ego gets in the way a lot. You know, but I am a lot more peaceful than I've ever been in my whole entire life.
Oh, wow.
And for that, I will always be grateful.
That's so beautiful. I mean, that is, again, I don't know what else to say, but to call it such a profound experience of what's inside of all of us.
What's true.
And then for you to come back and experience life again,
Yeah.
and to be able to connect it to who you really are on the inside, you know.
Yeah,
I know that when Sid was in his last year of life, and Ken and I had moved back to the island again, because he'd had that experience where he had crossed over to the other side, in his words, he wasn't afraid of death at all. He talks about that on one of his Hawaii tapes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, it's really quite weird, because I know, that somebody that I love dearly in this life will be there for me in the next.
That's right.
I've seen that.
Yeah. And he talked about that as going home, and that home ultimately is already inside of us. It's just another way of going even deeper into that formless home inside of us. And we saw him live that.
Wow.
You know, that we saw him the day before he passed. And by this time he was already bedridden. But on his face, like, there was this peace and joy, as if he knew he was going on a picnic, and then the next day he passed. So there was no hesitation or anything like that. He knew he was going home, and he was ready.
Yeah, my dad was very much like that.
Yeah. Wow.
My dad, he died a week before Christmas. And he'd been bedridden, and he said to my mum, get me dressed. And my mum said, well, why? Where are we going? He said, you're not going anywhere. I'm going Christmas shopping with my mum and dad.
Oh.
And my grandparents had both passed away.
Yeah.
So definitely he knew.
That's beautiful, Sue. You know, because when I hear these stories that just happen naturally, I doubt that your parents heard anything about the principles or anything.
Oh, absolutely not. And to be honest, if Dad got involved in it, you know, they were quite, you know, my dad was a military man. He was very much, you know, right, yeah. It's not here, it's not real, you know.
But it's lovely to hear when that experience, the profundity of that kind of experience, shows you the truth.
Yeah.
That this is in everybody, whether you know anything about the principles ever in your lifetime. This is who we are. You know, this is who we are, and what what's in store for us, you know, that we can enjoy our life and the richness of being, releasing more of our true nature and embracing our true nature. So we don't have to continue going to as many conferences and retreats and that kind of thing as maybe we do sometimes.
I don't know. I really enjoy them. Everyone I go to, I just get so much out of them.
Yeah, I know. But you know what my point is here, Sue, is that it's beautiful. You know, I love occasionally going to something as well or speaking at something. But what I love even more now at this phase in my life is enjoying the richness of my own spiritual nature, enjoying that feeling.
So beautiful.
Does anybody else have something they'd like to add? Thank you, Sue. No? Oh, yes, Ann Curtis. I can't hear you, Ann. I can see you. Oh, okay. No? I'm not, oh, okay. Okay, we'll wait for Ann to come back once she has got her sound together. Anybody else in the meantime? Is that Kathy? Yes, Kathy.
Hi. Hi, Elsie. First of all, it's wonderful to hear everyone and know that the principles are being, you know, disseminated and spread in Norway. I love hearing the accent. That's a joyful thing. One of the things that I've experienced this particular week that might just be common for everybody, I was teaching a course at a university and we're about halfway through it. And it's about the principles. And midpoint, a large percentage of the students hit that place where they're saying, but I don't have it. And it shows up in the funniest ways. And it can be something as clear as one of the students being so worried that she's not getting it, that she comes in talking about having a panic attack and laying on her floor, and then realizing in a very short period of time that she has actually been guided by her wisdom and having a very profound relationship with her partner later that same day, and coming back saying, this is so wonderful. And you could go through each one of the students. There's a process, I think, where we have to kind of step over the door, step in to realize what it is to, as you're saying, be mentored by mind. We're noticing the feeling that has come over us, and we may not have words for that. And that can be very frightening or unsettling to some who are new to it. So it's lovely to hear all of you talking about this. And as the one doing the sharing with the students, it's important that we pay attention to where we are too. Are we being mentored in the moment of interaction with the student so that we're not frightened?
Mm-hmm.
That I can't fix this for this student, I haven't done well. And it's all the same thing. Are we paying attention to that good feeling that is a part of us that's very formless? All of the comments have been wonderful today.
Yes, yes. And thank you, Kathy, for adding yours as well. Anne, are you back with us? But I still can't. Okay, now try again. Still not getting your sound. No. Oh. I guess mentored by mind. Can you send something in the chat? Could you say anything in the chat room? No? Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Anne. I'm sorry that that didn't work out. One last pan around the room here. Anybody else have anything you want to add or a question you might have?
If I may, Elsie, I would like to say something.
How do you say your name?
Alan.
Ireland. Is that right, Ireland? Okay. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Elsie. I just have to say first, it's lovely to hear how you talk about all the principles and everything. And the last week I've been listening to lots of your videos on YouTube, and they really hit. They're great for me.
Ah.
And my whole body is like, I have to tell this. So this comes straight from me. For 4 years ago, I had lots of panic attacks and lost my job and everything. And I got introduced to the three principles. And it really changed all my life.
Wow.
It's so great. It's hard to put, I don't want to put words on it, but the feeling, the everything. And now I'm back to full-time job. I'm more calm, and I feel like I'm the best person I can be.
Wow. Wow.
So thank you for all of this.
Thank you. Honestly, I can feel your emotion. I can feel how much this has transformed your life. I can feel that from you, and that you have the courage to share that. You will help so many people by your story. And I know from having been a student of this understanding for 44 years now, that everybody has a story that is unique to them. And sometimes there's more, more drama to the story, like more suffering and that kind of thing. Whatever your story is, when you've transformed that from that story, it will help people. It will help people. And that's part of the gift of your journey. That's part of the gift that you came into this world and you ended up having panic attacks. Now, when you look back, I bet you're grateful that you had those panic attacks because it introduced you, it brought the principles into your life, this living truth, so you could understand what was going on and share the hope of moving past that.
That's absolutely right, because I don't feel, I feel like this story is not for me, how can I say it?
Yeah.
I'm not telling this just for myself. I'm telling everybody, I've been through this. It is hope. You can do it as well.
Yes.
If I can, you can.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's wonderful. Honestly, I just love that. I wish I could give you a cuddle. I'm giving you a virtual cuddle.
Thank you.
I am known as the hugging lady. Whenever I go to the conference, it's hug, 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 hug. I just love it. Are you going to the London conference by any chance?
I'm going to the one in Tønsberg.
What's that?
I'm going to see in Tønsberg.
That's even better. That's even better.
Maybe London as well.
Oh, I'm looking forward to meeting you, honestly, because Tonsberg, I love Tonsberg, the city. I love Tori and Carrie and all the people that I met there the last time. They're just wonderful. And honestly, the feeling that happens there. And I will say, you know, this conference in London is my last conference. I've come to the stage now where, although I honor these huge conferences of 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 people that will be there, I'm finished with that now. You know, I love the intimacy of smaller retreats and gatherings. That's what I love now. That's what's in my life. And so I'm delighted that you're going to come to Tonsberg. We'll have a cuddle in Tonsberg.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. Anything else from anybody? Tori or Carrie, you have anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you for this fantastic webinar and for everybody who contributed and shared. And I'd love to welcome you all to Tønsberg, this little coastal resort town in southern Norway. Looking so much forward to the retreat here. I mean, people still talk about the retreat we had here 2 years ago with you. It gave people so much. So yeah, the information is available on the Facebook, and we will post information also together when we put out the recording.
Okay. You know, I remember that last retreat. I had done one also in Devon after the conference. I think it was the London conference. And I rarely nowadays split the group into small groups at some point during the 2 or 3 days retreat. But I was being guided by mind in the moment, and I ended up on the second day where in Devon, I asked the people if they'd like to go into small groups and just share a little bit about what they were hearing or if there was any questions or anything. And they loved that. And it was very, you know, a very good experience. In the past, like at one point, I used to do that a lot. After having not done it at all, following Sid's kind of his style, where I would just sit and engage the audience, and we became a team and shared in the feeling together. And so that was lovely. And then when we got to Norway, I think again on the second day, I thought, well, I'm going to try this again. You know, it just went over so well in Devon. And so I said to the group, would you like to split into small groups and just talk a little bit about your no, let's just stay together as a big group, because they were loving the feeling of engagement with the whole group. They didn't want to split. And it was just a beautiful example of the oneness manifesting among, I don't know, 30 or 35 people, however many were there. And I loved that. And I loved that mine mentored me in that way to ask, you know, not to put a form on what we should do. Like you had said earlier, Tori, sometimes how we want to control things, you know. It was to say to the audience, like, how does this sound to you? Do you want to do this or no? No. and so we didn't, you know, and it was just absolutely lovely. So I want to thank Carrie and Tori for inviting me again to Norway and to doing this retreat. And thank you all for those of you who shared verbally and those who shared just by joining us with your beautiful energy. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to meeting you at some point and to hearing you at some point, or email me and let me know what you were going to say. I would love that too. So thank you all, and lots of love to you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Elsie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.